Mexico Water Utility Authority, for being here this evening, spending some extra time in Clovis this afternoon for this, and thank you for all your work in helping prepare the presentation. Mr. Ortega will be able to help with answering questions when we do reach the point where we have a Q&A. So wanted to set the agenda just a little bit before we get going. The intention, the purpose of this is to provide a informational update on the Ute Pipeline project. I will move through the slides fairly quickly, doing kind of a high-level update for you, but then there will be times when we slow down and really drill down and talk to you about some of the specifics. Also, I want to give you a status and a 10-year look at the levels in the reservoir. I think that's important for folks to understand. Very important piece of the project, obviously. And then we also want to discuss, I want to discuss with you the city's current funding strategy for the Ute Pipeline project, as well as the proposed, as of very recently proposed funding strategy for the city of Clovis's portion of that. And then we'll give you the opportunity for a Q&A, and then we'll find a place to wrap up. And I've already been warned not to be long-winded, so I'll do my best. We can talk about this project for hours. We won't. Just a little bit of background, a little foundation, just before we get into the update. I think we all understand the reason why, but obviously the reason why we even need to be concerned with and working on water and addressing water concerns is the decline of the Ogallala Aquifer. The Ogallala Aquifer has been in decline for a number of years. Simply put, it is being mined at a rate that is unsustainable. It's going down and down every year, and that is cause for concern. I don't share that in any intention to incite fear or any of those kinds of things, but our sole source of water for our municipality and for this region is groundwater, and it's going away. It's going away. So we have to address that, and we're doing that in a number of ways. And it's important that we execute and complete the plans that the city has had, that the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority has had for many, many years now. And as the city of Clovis, the ways that we're addressing that are the effluent reuse system, right? So the city of Clovis has a wastewater treatment plant, cleans up the city's wastewater, pipes it back to town, uses it to water parks, ball fields, all of those kinds of things, and now is watering our 18-hole golf course on the north end of town. Why would we do that? We want to remove the demand from the aquifer, right? If we can avoid pulling it out of the ground, pumping it out of the ground, we want to do so. And so we're leveraging reuse. We're also a community that is doing a fair job at conservation on the individual level. If you look at what the wastewater treatment plant is receiving in wastewater, that is going down. If you look at what Ebcor says that they're providing to their customers, who are the citizens of the city of Clovis, over the last 10 years, that's gone down. And that's due to individuals conserving, whether it's low flow appliances and those kinds of things, following a watering schedule, or maybe we've done a lot of zero-scape across the community, but we're conserving water on an individual basis. The city and the county are also engaged in a broader effort to do groundwater conservation, and that's involved the standing up of a land trust that is executing on some Department of Defense grants, REPI grants, that are being used to turn off agricultural pumping in an area out northwest of Cannon Air Force Base. So these are the things that we are doing, and but the most important, in my humble opinion, the most important piece, the linchpin in all of our water plans in order to achieve water sustainability, is the plan that's existed for the longest, and that is the Ute Pipeline. The Ute Pipeline will connect us to Ute Reservoir, which is a surface water, renewable surface water source. Right now we are solely reliant upon groundwater. Being connected to that renewable source that is Ute Reservoir gives us the ability to achieve water sustainability. And we all understand why that's important. We all want to not have to worry about there being water at the tap when we turn it on. But when we put on our longer range vision mindset and we think about, what's Clovis look like in 20, 30, 50 years? What does the region look like in 20, 30, 50 years? Well, if we address our water issues, if we rise up, meet these challenges, and take advantage of the opportunity that we have to complete the Ute Pipeline project, the future could be very bright. We are one of, or the Ute Pipeline project is one of 7 federally authorized rural water projects in the United States, in the whole country. And, there are countries all over the Southwest and probably other parts of our country that would love to have this piece, that we're talking about this evening. And so if we look down out into the future, we know it's brighter if we have water sustainability. When I talk to Ebcor, when I talk to the vice president of Ebcor, and I talk to him frequently, as does the city manager and other leaders in the community likely, he tells me he's confident that Ebcor can meet demand this summer. He's confident that they'll continue to be able to meet demand, providing that they continue to find more sources of water, right? Imagine if we don't complete the Ute Pipeline project, or we don't complete it as soon as possible. Well, that phone call, that conversation could be very different 5, 10, 15 years from now. It could be, we're not confident about meeting demand. We need you to enact restrictions. As a municipality, you need to tell people they can't water. They can't water outdoors and do all those kinds of things. And so it's a serious enough situation. It's a big enough challenge that we must rise up to this challenge, meet it, and take advantage of the great opportunity that we have to address this issue and achieve water sustainability. And as we get into the update on the pipeline, I hope that you will see it the way I see it, and that is as an incredible opportunity that we must seize. So we will jump into the update that's been prepared. So I'm going to kind of just summarize the first couple of slides. The Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority is the entity that is made up of 4 member communities. Clovis, and when we say Clovis, we always include Cannon Air Force Base, Portales, Texaco, and Elida. We're the members of the Water Authority. We pay dues to the Water Authority. And the Water Authority is the entity who's been tasked with and has the mandate to construct the Ute Pipeline project. In 2009, the project became federally authorized. And sorry, I get very distracted when we have the audio feedback. Pause for a moment. Okay, let's see how we're doing. Yep. Add an echo. Okay. All right, very good. So, as I said, the project became federally authorized in 2009, and so it can be a little bit confusing. You'll see the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority acronym, but then you also see the Eastern New Mexico Rural Water System. Okay, the ENMRWS. The federal government sees the project and calls it the Eastern New Mexico Rural Water System. We can just call it the Ute Pipeline project. Okay. But again, federally authorized in 2009, that meant we were going to receive federal funding. That came with a commitment from the federal government that they would pay 75% of the project. Okay. In 2010, the state of New Mexico enacted the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority and made the Water Authority a utility. And with that came a commitment from the state of New Mexico to provide 15% funding. So that leaves 10% for the member communities. Again, the member communities are Clovis, Cannon Air Force Base, Portales, Texaco, and Elida. Of those members, Clovis is the monster member, right, at 76% of the authority, which comes with the burden of, our portion of the 10% local funding is the largest. And but that makes sense though, right? We're the population center. We're the community that has the most to gain and the most to lose, right? So the delivery system that's being constructed will deliver a maximum of 16,415 acre feet each year. And in a few slides, we'll show you how that breaks down. But that is the membership of the authority's total when you total all that's reserved by each of the members of the authority. There we go. Okay. I think we may have gone forward 2 slides, but that's okay. As I said, I wanted to summarize the first few. So the project includes the ability to move 28 million gallons per day. So the treatment facility that will be constructed will have that capacity. There's 90 miles of transmission pipeline and 30 miles of lateral pipeline. And again, that funding breakdown is 75% federal, 15% state, 10% local. So the members of the authority are getting a 90% grant, okay? And we have been under construction for several years now. The intake facility at the reservoir was completed in 2016. We have completed, as of 2021, Finished Water 2. That's the section of the pipeline or the phase of the pipeline that connects Clovis to Cannon Air Force Base. And we are under construction right now on Finished Water 3, which will connect Cannon Air Force Base to the Portales system. And we're currently out to bid and hope to award the contract for Finished Water 1 in early October. And that is the phase of the pipeline that goes north from Cannon Air Force Base toward Grady in that direction and toward where the proposed water treatment plant location will be. We're engaged in all phases of the projects, or all phases of the project at some level or another, whether that's an alignment study for the Alida lateral, or if that's actually under construction on Finished Water 3A, everything from alignment study to easement acquisition to design and construction is taking place throughout the project. So this slide shows us the breakdown on the member allocations. So as you can see, Alida has 50 acre feet per year, and Texaco has 250 acre feet per year. Portales comes in at 3,583, and as I mentioned, Clovis, has the largest share, 12,532 acre feet reserved at the reservoir, and these are annual maximums. This slide, again, as I mentioned, this slide bears out that we're actually engaged in all phases of the project. And just to kind of orientate you with that slide, on the far left, you can see the reservoir. Okay, so it's like we've turned the map on its side, right? The far left is north, and that's where the reservoir is. And then on the far right of this slide is Alida, so south. And on this slide, we see a description of what the activity is on each of the phases at this point. I won't go through all of that, but you see the yellow section where you have 2 arrows pointing at a yellow section. That is the portion of the project that's Finished Water 1, and we're out to bid on that now. And you see the little red portion, that's the yellow portion at the top. You see that it's kind of disconnected from the rest of the system, and that's the Alida, the Texaco lateral. And the plan there is to extend from a connection point at the end of the city's water system, which is being extended as far as the airport. We'll connect there and go on to Texaco and get that community connected. So this slide gives you a picture of kind of where we're at telling a little bit more of the story about what's going on with each of the phases. Finished Water 3 construction. Finished Water 1 is 100% designed, and as I said, that's the one we're out to bid on. Raw Water 3 is the other side of the treatment facility. So interesting to point out, we refer to the phases of the project as Finished Water 1 or 2 or 3, or we might say raw water. And so between or from the reservoir and until it's treated, it's referred to as raw water, and afterwards it's referred to as finished water. And so, as I said, we're working on something or another on each of the phases. So raw water 2, which is north, that's the Caprock area, I believe. Is that correct? Yep, that's the Caprock area. Raw water 1 would be the section that is actually from the intake facility at the reservoir to the base of the Caprock. And then we're also working on right-of-way and lateral alternative study for the Alida lateral and pump station. Got some photos for you. If anyone goes down and enjoys recreation at the reservoir, as I do, you're familiar with this. This is where the intake facility is located. This is on the south shore, near the dam. More pictures of the intake facility. Here's a visual. So once completed, there will be a structure that sits on top of the intake facility, and so you see that illustrated on this slide. And then on the far right of the slide, you see the intake facility, and you see what elevation depth it makes it to. And so the bottom of the intake structure is 3,735.5 feet in elevation above sea level. Here's some construction photos. I believe this was Finished Water 2. So the picture on the lower right is of the main vault, right? That's the cannon vault. So maybe we have that. Yeah, here we go. So this is kind of an exciting vault, right? Because it's this intersection. It's demonstrating how our communities will be connected with this pipeline. As you can see, you have water coming in from the treatment plant and then going either to the Portales Alida side of things or the Texaco Cannon and Clovis systems. I believe I recognize these photos from Finished Water 3. This is the phase of the project that's under construction along, or a lot of it is along Highway 467, the back highway. We often refer to it as the back highway from Cannon to Portales. It's very it's very technical how they use different types of material, and I won't dare start to describe it, but there's a very specific process for compacting the material around that pipeline, and it's interesting to see it happen. Okay, so I mentioned that in the last several months there's been so much that's transpired that it was time for an update, and really what triggered all of that was the federal infrastructure bill, which we all read about. New occurred last fall. The federal government passed the Federal Infrastructure and Jobs Act, or we will kind of refer to it as the infrastructure bill. Within that bill was $1 billion that was earmarked and set aside, earmarked for the federally authorized projects. Remember, I said we're one of 7 federally authorized projects. And so, when they make that kind of commitment to funding the federally authorized projects, that means we're gonna get an increase in funding, right? And so, as soon as that was passed, Mr. Ortega, our administrator, myself, and many others on the team, including our engineers and our consultants, we began meeting very frequently and got to work. And understanding that there was going to be a chance at receiving a whole lot more funding, we we've got our plans together, and we created a 5-year plan. We understood that this money was going to be distributed over 5 years, so we wanted to put together a plan to complete the project in 5 years, and then ask for funding according, right? And so after the passage of that bill, as I said, we were busy working on creating the 5-year plan and preparing our asks of the federal government as well as the state government, so that we could, start to really make some progress. And we were very successful, very fortunate in receiving that funding. This is record funding. The project has never received this level of funding before, and we are having received this funding, this has gotten very real. We're going to complete this project in the near future. So I won't go through each line, but the bottom line there is that the federal government provided $177,400,000. And that, of course, goes towards their 75% match for the total cost. The state of New Mexico came along at a really high number, $30 million, and of course that means that the member communities portion for FY22 is $20,740,000. So the total for FY22 is over $228 million. So we, with this funding, are definitely getting down the road on completing this project. Now, keep in mind, that's the FY22 funding. We're already preparing our asks for the FY23 funding. So again, we have that 5-year plan, which I'll show you. Some of you may be able to have a better view of that than others, but what you're looking at there is the 5-year plan. It shows the different steps that would need to take place in each of the phases of the project, and it shows how we can engage in all phases immediately because of the higher levels of funding, and complete the project in a much shorter time frame than we thought we could have prior to the passage of the infrastructure bill, and prior to the record support from the state of New Mexico as well. So as you can see there, and I want to be careful to say this, so we received record funding in FY22. We're preparing our ask for FY23, assuming we get the funding we ask for, an optimal funding scenario each fiscal year for the next 5 years. We could complete the project by 2029. Now, that wouldn't necessarily mean we're delivering water 2029, but we could be finished with construction and getting really close to delivering water. So this slide is a demonstration of the Authority Board approved projects for FY23, and again shows that we are engaged in all phases, working on different levels of the project, from the reservoir to Elida. This is an important slide, and as I said, the next thing we're going to do is talk about the city's funding strategy, how it is that the city is proposing to satisfy the part of the 10% match that we need to. This slide shows what the City of Clovis membership contributions do. This is right out of the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority's finance plan, and as you can see, they go up sharply, starting in FY20, 23, 24. I believe it's a 13.6% increase each year. And then we wind up with this tabletop, or this plateau, that is up at that higher level, that 2.9 million per year level. These again are the membership contributions, the annual membership dues that the City of Clovis pays. But then you can see in FY36, that's the last time they're that high in the finance plan. They trail off considerably after that, and that's because we will have completed construction. We will have spent the money to complete construction, and we'll be delivering water. And so you see the membership dues come down. Now, I want to point out that the cash flow plan, the finance plan, and what you're seeing on the screen there depends upon the city of Clovis putting a lump sum in now, early on in this ramp up of the construction phase, and it's $15 million that the city has committed. It was in 2019 that the previous mayor and commission passed a resolution that said when the federal funding reaches $40 million and the state funding reaches $30 million, at that time the city of Clovis would, as the leader member of the authority, would inject $15 million in a lump sum into the project. Now, when they did that in 2019, they didn't know that we were going to have the federal infrastructure bill of 2021, but here we are. It's happened. The federal government has exceeded that trigger. The state has exceeded the 30 million trigger, and so it's time. It's time to put that in. So the city's been planning or anticipating needing to do that at some point. We knew we would. The Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority has depended on and built their finance plan around the city of Clovis doing that. Now, what if we didn't? What if we didn't? And I wanted to stay on this slide, because if we don't put that lump sum in, we still have to pay our share somehow, right? And so what the Water Authority would do is rework the finance plan and rework our dues structure. And so where you see it going up and doing what it does there, and then trailing off in FY37, that's the effect of putting the $15 million in now. If we didn't, then you can imagine what that might be like, right? It's gonna go up a lot steeper, and it's gonna stay up a lot longer. And so when I transition out of the update on the pipeline, we're going to talk about how the city is funding, where we're getting the membership dues money right now, and what we anticipate happening with that fund. And what I'll explain to you, or what I'll attempt to show you, is that the way that we're currently funding all of our water expenses is through a 0.25% gross receipts tax, and it would not sustain our dues increase if we don't put the lump sum in now, if that makes sense. We'll talk about that more in a few minutes. So here, as part of the presentation, we won't hit on them. I told you at the beginning, I talked about the why. Why are we doing this? Well, because of the aquifer decline, because of the challenge that we have with water, and how important it is that we execute on our plans to rise and meet those challenges and seize the opportunities that we have. The opportunity that we have is a 90% grant to construct a project that connects us to a renewable source of water. Okay. But there's been multiple studies completed in the area by Canon and by others, which bear out the reality that the aquifer is in decline. Ebcor, our utility provider, they tell us that. They know that. They have over 80 wells now doing what 40 wells, actually doing less than what 40 wells did 10 years ago or so. Talk to any ag producer. They tell you that their groundwater is in decline. Okay. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the health of the reservoir, and or at least just the status of the reservoir, and then look at a 10-year timeline. Right. So this is not data that isn't available to the public. This is right online on UnitedStatesGeologicalSurvey.com, USGS.com. They have instrumentation at Ute just like they do at a lot of other places, and so you can go daily, and I usually do, and check the level. So that's today, July 6th, 2022, compared to last year, right? A year ago today. But if you look at where we're at today, the bold, the darker line, the lower line, the reservoir level is stated in feet above sea level, or elevation level, 3,775.96 feet. That's what it is today. The crest of the spillway at the reservoir is 3,788. So, doing math in my head in public, and that's a tough one, but we're talking 13 feet below the crest of the spillway, give or take. So, next slide, I want to show you. Okay, so this is a 10-year look. So on the far left, you have 10 years ago. So I used on this slide, I went to June 30th of 2012. Okay, so just over 10 years ago, and the water level at that time was, guess what, 3,775. The same elevation that it is today. So 10 years ago today, the reservoir was almost exactly the same level that it is today. But then I wanted to look at 10 years, and so on the far right is today, and again, it's the same as it was 10 years ago. So what were the highs and lows over the last 10 years? Well, that dip that you see just to the right of March on the chart, or on the graph, it says March 2013. That dip, the low point of that dip, was actually the latter part of June in 2013, and that level was 3771. So about 4 to 5 feet lower than where it is today. Okay, so that's the lowest that it got in the last 10 years. But then where we have the drag handle there is on October. I forget the day actually. Actually, I have it right here. So the high point in the last 10 years was October 11th, 2017, and it crested the spillway. So the reservoir the water was running over the spillway on that day. The elevation level of the water was 3,789.05, and again the crest of the spillway is 3,788.9. So you had it going over there. So I just wanted to show everyone that, so that everyone can understand that Ute Reservoir is actually in very good shape. You know, we hear about Elephant Butte, we hear about Conscious, we hear about Fort Sumner, all of these other reservoirs around the state, and their poor condition due to the drought and so forth. The Interstate Stream Commission knew what they were doing when they constructed the dam. They put it in a great place. The watershed for Ute Reservoir is massive, and it's doing well. Okay, so there's a slide just showing the level on July 6th of 2012. Again, it was that 3775.78. And I pulled all of this right from usgs.com this afternoon and just screenshotted it. You can go look at that and look at any point in the last, I think they have something like 60 years of data. So wanted to point that out. So we're an intimate group. So are there any questions at this point? Because then I'm going to transition to the city's funding strategy. Yes, Ms. Kathy Elliott.
Mayor, so I can tell the numbers there from the above sea level, but that does not correlate in my mind as to how many feet we actually have of water to play with. I know that if I go out to the beach, do I see the reeds or don't I see the reeds? You see, right. How does that look when obviously it's going over the spillway or the low side? And if the pipeline came into play, what would the look like as opposed in that picture? What would the level be at that point?
Okay, if the pipeline is connected, or when the pipeline is connected?
Sure.
Yeah, so year in, year out, the reservoir will be lower than it is now due to us taking taking that water and using it to supplement our drinking water needs.
To what degree?
Well, there's the only minimum pool that has been established is about 34 feet lower in elevation than where it is today, 3741. And on the slide that I showed you that showed the intake structure, and we showed the elevation level of the bottom of that, that's 5 feet below the minimum pool. And when I say minimum pool, it's not actually a minimum pool. It's an agreement between the New Mexico Interstate Stream Commission and the New Mexico Game and Fish Department that would be the lowest that it could be and maintain wildlife and fish. But to answer your question, and I hate to, I'll answer it like this: Memorial Day weekend last summer, the last weekend in May, the first few days of June, there was a lot of rain up at the reservoir, and the level came up approximately 2 feet in elevation, okay, and that 2 feet in water elevation added 12,500 acre feet of storage to the reservoir, and this is per the USGS data.
Okay.
And so when we think about the city of Clovis having a 12,532 acre feet per year allocation, that kind of helps us, or it does me anyway. It helps me start to quantify, well, what would that look like? What if the city of Clovis could all at once just take the 12,500 feet that we have reserved? Well, give or take the level that it's at here, it would be about 2 to 3 feet in elevation level of the reservoir. And that's not a scientific mathematical answer. I'm thinking back to when we had a rainstorm, and we could see 2 feet in elevation increase, and then that correlated to a 12,500 acre feet of storage increase. And so that helped me to start to picture how much is, what does 12,000 acre feet mean in terms of level, right?
The height.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you're saying that one particular rainstorm or time frame
Yeah.
allocated enough moisture of what you are anticipating over the course of a year.
Correct. That's,
Yes.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
I'm saying that with a question mark at the end.
Yes, I want to give a caveat. The city of Clovis has 12,532 acre feet reserved, but if you look at what Ebcor is delivering to their customers, the residents of Clovis, they're delivering something like 8,000 acre feet per year to the residents of Clovis, and I point that out to say that we have cushion. I mean, the city of Clovis is not going to take 12,500 acre feet. At least we wouldn't this year if we were connected, just because we don't have that demand. Yeah,
At our
Mr.
current
Ortega.
levels, yes.
Mayor Morris, if I could.
Yeah, let's get you the microphone, Mr. Ortega.
I want to point out that the reservoir will hold up to 200,000 acre feet of water. That is part of the Canadian River Compact that is allowed by the state of New Mexico to hold up to 200,000 acre feet. Our allocation is 16,415 acre feet per year. So maybe that helps you kind of get a visual idea. Traditionally, the reservoir, if you look back at the records, will hold about 180,000 acre feet on average, and maybe sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, but around that area. And whenever you think about how many feet will it go down if we take our allocation, it depends. It depends on where the reservoir is at the time. So if you go back and look at that 16,415 acre feet throughout a year period, it's not going to be pumping full pipe all the time. It's going to be adjusted as needed, depending on the time of the year, depending on the demand of the member communities. But it's not going to be just turn the valves on and start pumping as hard as you can. until it runs dry. There are going to be limitations to what we can take. We do have an agreement with the Interstate Stream Commission for that allocation. It may be some years that we take the full allocation, but there may be years that we don't take the full allocation. So a lot of variables there. Just wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Ortega, and it sounds like maybe there's another comment, but I wanted to tag on to what Mr. Ortega is saying. The reservoir is owned and operated by the New Mexico Interstate Stream Commission, and there is an MOU that exists between them and the Department of Game and Fish, and also the Energy and Natural Resources Department of the state. And if you read that MOA, you understand that the New Mexico Interstate Stream Commission is going to, because they own and operate it, they are going to monitor the levels, and they may, well, they would impose restrictions on what we could pull and so forth in extreme drought or extreme low levels in the reservoir. But just to think about this conversation, and as the Eastern Mexico Water Utility Authority Board, which is made up of elected officials from Clovis, Portales, Elida, Texaco, we want to be good stewards of that reservoir. As I talked about the plans that we have to achieve water sustainability, we know what an important, in fact, I think it is the most important piece in our water plans that Reservoir is. And so we want to be good stewards of it. We may, and we're going to check with Interstate Stream Commission. We're going to have, we're obviously in communication with them. We have a relationship to them. If appropriate, the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority Board could impose on ourselves, certain restrictions. When the reservoir reaches a certain level, we could, for example, say, well, we're going to scale back what we may take by 20%, just as an example. And but if you read that agreement between ISC, Energy and Natural Resources, and Game and Fish, what you see is that they're going to manage that. They're going to manage that. And I think that certainly, and I wouldn't suggest that you're being indirect, because I know you well enough to know. But the elephant in the room is the water authority, is Clovis and Portales and these other members going to drain Ute Reservoir? And the answer is no, we're not. And have no desire to. We want to be good stewards of that reservoir. It's precious, and we care about it. And some of us use it, we enjoy it for recreation. We want it to be there for those things too. But keeping everything in perspective, that reservoir was built and exists for the purpose of providing supplemental drinking water to Eastern New Mexico. This is, for those of you here in person, I can pass this around for you. For those online, it's almost unfair that I hold this up and talk about it. But this is a document from September 8th, 1964, and it was the preliminary feasibility report. Okay, that the folks did back then. So the dam was completed in 1963. So you had a reservoir there. So in '64, this report was done, and communities as far south as Jowl and Hobbs and Eunice and Carlsbad, Artesia, Hagerman, all these were included in this study, and they were all contemplating and planning, whether or not they wanted to be members of this, if they wanted to be recipients of this. So at this stage in the game, in 2022, I'm actually kind of glad that they aren't all there, right? Because that would be, the pie divided up that much more. That being said, when we were talking about the amount, and we're going to talk about the funding strategy, and we talk about the amount that the city of Clovis has to put in for that 10% local match, if we had more members, then that local match would be less of a burden on each of those members. But I just want to point out that, we're going to be stewards of that reservoir. It's too important not to be. But the original purpose was and still is to provide supplemental drinking water to Clovis and the other members of the Eastern New Mexico Water Utility Authority, and that's what we're going to do.
This is just a logistical question due to my lack of knowledge, and I haven't seen it explained throughout the project. I've seen it a couple times. We see the large pipelines coming into our communities. How do those integrate into our current water delivery system to where we understand the difference in what Ebcor is delivering to us and what we are delivering through the pipeline system?
Yeah. If we were just chatting, I would take a stab at that, but I'm going to let Mr. Ortega answer that.
Thank you, and Justin, please jump in if you'd like, but we have designed the system to blend water, both surface water and groundwater together. So, you know, you probably are going to taste a little bit difference in the water that you're used to drinking today, but we will be able to blend both at each of the at the receiving sites. So every community will have systems in place to allow for that blending.
Thanks for that explanation. And did that get at your question? Okay, good. Any other questions or comments at this point? Yes? Yeah. Miss Elliott? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Muse is first.
Is the allocation, do we have to take it every year to retain it, or can we use 4,000 acre feet 1 year and not lose it?
It's the latter. So that's the maximum. Our reservation is the maximum that we could pull. That doesn't mean we would have to.
But it's a maximum
Annual,
per year.
Per
Annual.
year, correct.
Okay.
Okay, right.
Okay.
So it wouldn't carry over. Yeah, yeah. Good question. Miss Elliott?
I noticed some of the infrastructure projects there include pipeline and things like that, but I don't see anything associated with the power for all of those pumps. That and also have, in order to put these pipelines through, you're running through somebody's land. Are you enforcing eminent domain, or are there paid structures in which these people are paid for this inconvenience? How does it work?
Yep, that's great. And what I can tell you is that that yes, there are processes. The easement acquisition process is something that Mr. Ortega and the team spend a lot of time on, and the question about the electricity, I know, you know, we've approved as the board, we've taken action on things where, you know, the engineers and the designers of the project were explaining to us what they're doing with electricity and how they're working with the utility providers. So I'll let Mr. Ortega answer in a little detail.
Thank you, Mayor Morris. Of the hundreds of easements that we have been working on, we've had one eminent domain case. And as far as power to power the pump stations, we are currently working on that design to use renewable energy for our pump stations, including the intake facility, the pump station at the Caprock base, and then at the top of, once we get to the top of the Caprock, it is gravity flow all the way to each of our member communities' locations. In fact, we're going to have to slow the water down to some degree, and we're looking at generating electricity and energy there to help run those, not only the treatment facility, but other areas that we need to use electricity.
Yeah, thanks for that. Any other questions? Yep, Mr. Ingram.
I, a few years ago, saw a city just about 300 miles east of here, excuse me, in a desperation of lacking of water. I have ridden the hotter than hell 100-mile bicycle race 5 years in a row at Wichita Falls, Texas. And one year they were so desperately out of water, and yet a terrible situation. One enterprising individual had made a fortune out of it, but he made T-shirts that said, "Your PP is our H2O," because when you mentioned that using the water for watering the golf course, and they were using it, we were drinking it, and they had been using that, and that guy made those T-shirts, and they said he can't make them fast enough. But on the other side of that, I was telling Mike, when I took a cultural anthropology class at ENMU to complete my bachelor's degree, And our final exam is we had to write a paper of something changing culture in New Mexico. My initial thought would be some of the tribes and people on the west side of the state and their problems with alcohol. And I thought, wait a minute, there's nothing more needing than water. And so I got to researching and looking at it, and I thought, we're hoping for this, as Mike has been talking about, but I thought, I looked, and I just looked again the other day at the closeness to the Ogallala and the Missouri River. I called them and asked them about that. I got a response, leave our water alone. It's ours. And then about 4 years later, there was a flood that decimated part of where that river is. And I called him back. I said, still got some spare water? He said, you can come get all you want. But anyway, on that water, and I just looked at this recently. Now, here's a figure that we'll find astounding. When the Missouri and the Mississippi run together at the Gulf, when they empty into the Gulf, there is 600,000 cubic feet of water per second empty into the Gulf of Mexico, which then is useless because it's salt water. And just in case I'm thinking ahead. I would have no idea what this would take. But I thought some pipeline dumping some of that water from Missouri into the Ogallala. I'd love to advertise that we got so much water here. We got a lot of good land here. We need some more people to live here. Use it as a sales point instead of a desperation that we've got to have it. So I'm just spouting out a silly idea perhaps, but I just mentioned that to Mike and showed him part of a paper. And the paper I wrote for undergrad, well, it worked so well, I handed it in for a master's paper too, and it didn't fit the class, but the guy liked the thought so much, instead of a C, gave me an A for it too. So I'm hoping this is going together, and this was just a little thought I had from that paper I wrote at ENMU a few years ago.
Thanks for those comments, Mr. Ingram. Any other questions or comments at this point? We'll transition. Okay. So having I hope given an update on the pipeline project, I think some important takeaways are the the funding that we're receiving from the federal government being matched by the state, being matched by the member communities, is coming in at a rate that we can accomplish this in the relative near future, as we've shown you, or as I've shown you with the presentation. So I hope that you can see that, and I hope that I've communicated that. And then the other key takeaway for me, as I've learned so much more about this than I ever thought I might have, and that is that we are actually so fortunate to have this project. There are going to be other communities around us that don't. I mean, we got a call. The Water Authority got a call from a West Texas town asking, hey, can we get some of that Ute water? And it's like, no, it doesn't work that way. This project is ours, and we've held on to this, and many leaders over the last 60 years have kept it alive and made this work. And now we're at the point, a very exciting time where we could finish this project that could give us water sustainability, something so important, so vital, that communities all around us won't have. And just think about what our future looks like versus what it might look like if we didn't have this piece of the water sustainability that we desperately need. So it's a valuable asset. It's a great opportunity, and we need to seize it. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. So let's talk about how we're trying to do that. So we did a lot of talking about these slides in the last several the last half day or day, and so I just needed to orientate myself with what I'm looking at there. So expected revenue. So on the left side there, or estimated revenue, you see a pie chart, and you notice that the 74.2% of the pie chart is gross receipts tax. So we have a couple of things going on there. Then the 28 or 23.8% is property tax. So that property tax is the proposed funding strategy for the $15 million lump sum that we talked about earlier, that I told you about, that that the city has planned to put in, that the Water Authority anticipates us putting in, that doing so gives us the dues structure that was on the screen earlier. So that's proposed, and that will be in front of the commission for final approval at the second commission meeting in July, so later this month. The larger portion, the gross receipts, which is 74.2% of our what we expect in revenue, that's a 0.25% gross receipts tax that has been in place for 10 plus years, 12 years, something like that. It was enacted by the city of Clovis around the time that the project received the federal authorization, and that the state of New Mexico enacted the Water Utility Authority. It was clear to the city of Clovis that we would need to find a revenue source to input our local match. And so we have, for all of these years now, for over a decade, we've had a gross receipts tax in place that is a 0.25% gross receipts tax, and that's our Ute Water Fund, okay? And that's, from there, we pay our dues to the authority. From there, we pay our fees to the Interstate Stream Commission, and our reservation expenses, because we have to pay for our 12,532 acre feet that is reserved. We have to pay a reservation fee for it annually, and so we're funding up until this point our Ute Water expenses through this 0.25% gross receipts tax. So gross receipts tax is funding the lion's share, the 70+% share of the pipeline project for the city of Clovis. The proposed property tax is a smaller by percentage portion of the anticipated revenue. And so then on the right side of the screen, you see the expenses. So if we think about all of the expenses that we have with the pipeline project, you see how it breaks down: 71.7 and 28.3. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. Here we go. Okay. So now, so the last slide showed you by percentage. This is showing you the dollar amounts. And, we have to estimate when we do that. We don't know what a 0.25% gross receipts tax is going to produce year from year. We hope, and for me as mayor, everything circles back to we must grow our local economy so that gross receipts tax continues to go up, right? But we have to guess. But if we think about, over time, between now and, when we looked at the slide where the dues come down after 2036, so by then we will have, had this much in revenue we estimate from the gross receipts tax, and the property tax is a whole lot easier to estimate because we know what we're doing there. We're borrowing $15 million. We understand what the expenses associated with that loan are and so forth. So we can understand that that's going to be roughly $17,433,000. Okay, so that's again painting the picture that the lion's share, over 70% of the revenue that the city of Clovis is using to meet their obligations in order to take advantage of this opportunity is coming from gross receipts tax, and it's the smaller share that the commission has decided, and that I wholeheartly agree with, that we should fund with property tax. And so again, you have the estimated expenses on the right of that screen. So we have gross receipts helping us fund this. Where do we come up with the lump sum to put the $15 million in? We could, what's available? What are the options on the table? We could increase gross receipts tax. We could cut from the city's budget other places, right? Those kinds of things. But if you look at the composition of the city budget and you understand how lean the city of Clovis runs as it is, we can't go cut somewhere to come up with $15 million. In fact, you know, we are under pressure to raise gross receipts as it is to continue to meet the demands, as you see, you know, wages coming up and things like that. And so you know, I posed the question to the city commission at the last city commission meeting after having talked about a lot of what we've just talked about here. I said, you know, gross receipts tax is funding has been and continues to fund and will, but before we're done, fund the lion's share of the city's obligation. But it won't do it by itself. That we know that 0.25% gross receipts won't do it by itself, and so we need to make that injection of 15 million. So I said the question is, you know, is it appropriate that property owners would, you know, take a little bit more or pay a little bit more in property tax in order to accomplish this? You know, and that's not fun. That's not fun to talk about. And you know, no elected official wants to raise property tax. I mean, we don't want to do that. But again, think about the need, think about the opportunity we have, and then think about who stands to gain the most or lose the most if we don't accomplish water sustainability, right? And so, so the plan that we arrived at was to propose a 1 mil increase in property tax. That will produce enough stable revenue to service the debt on the 15 million that we're getting. And by the way, that's a $15 million loan that we're getting at 1%, and we're getting that from the state, from the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund. It's a program that we've discovered and found out about just in the last 6 months or so. So we're getting the money at a very low interest rate, and then, you know, for that investment on the part of the citizens of Clovis, you know, we're getting that 90% match as the state and the federal government come along, you know, to construct a project that will ensure, you know, property values in the future, and as you know, as we reach water sustainability. And so, you know, I'm a property owner in town, and I've pulled out my my property tax valuation form and looked into that to see how it was going to affect me if final approval or adoption, you know, actually comes about. And if you start to look at, okay, well, what's the impact, you know, to the average property owner in Clovis? And I'm not saying all of this to just, you know, to illustrate, you know, oh, it's just such a small impact, you know, you ought to just smile and be happy about it. I'm not doing that, because none of us want to pay more in property tax. But let's discuss the facts. Let's discuss the realities around this. I went out to census.gov, you know, so it's census data, so it's as dependable as whatever, you know, is on the census website. The average home value, owner-occupied home value in the city of Clovis is $132,900. Okay, so I would imagine that the census folks are talking about market value when they say that, and maybe we can read the fine print and confirm that. But if you look at your property tax valuation statement, it's clear to you that the tax assessor values your home much differently than the market is for your home, right? So it's lower. So when they you know, on your statement you see a full value, well, that full value is less than what the market is. But furthermore, the county takes the full value, tax appraisal value that they have, and they tax you on 1/3 of that, 33 1/3% of that. So again, I think the 132 census data, 132,900 that we understand the average owner-occupied home in Clovis is, if we just use that number, 1/3 of that is 44,000. So the impact on the average owner-occupied property across our city would be $44 annually. And I just have to think, when we think about what we are getting in return, that's a good investment on the part of the citizens of Clovis, on the part of property owners in Clovis. Questions? You had a question, Ms. Elliott.
I believe you should have started with your ending statement, frankly.
I always love the critiques. So,
Yes, well, I had a question on your pretty little circles. The estimated revenue of gross receipts tax, without my glasses on, it says 54,421,778. And then the estimated expenses were 44 million. That's where I'm getting confused on this, because there is a $10 million difference on this chart. Can you explain that and how that is not actually revenue that could go back to justify less or being able to pay that 15 mil?
I'm going to ask Mr. Howalt. He's going to do a great job of explaining it.
Certainly. And so what we've done is we run a cash flow projections on what the city's share of membership contributions are from the Water Utility Authority based off their finance plan. And so if you recall what their chart looks like, and it starts ramping up and then flattens off, well, currently what our gross receipts brings in will not cover what our annual membership contribution is in the future. And so we're building up cash reserves based off that current gross receipts tax. And so at some point in time, we start drawing down on the cash reserves that are within that. And so eventually, the gross receipts tax alone, based off my current projections, won't be enough to even cover our membership contributions to the Water Utility Authority, yet alone pay off debt service for a $15 million bond. Why there's such a big difference then, if you notice then on that backside, when it starts to decrease, obviously the gross receipts tax will generate more than what is needed to pay those membership contributions. So you start building those revenues or that cash reserve back up within that particular fund. Is that clear?
Is that a good answer? Yeah, sir? Let's get him the mic so he can.
I wanted to understand, you stated that the last 10 years we had 0.25% that remained intact for the expenses to this. And did you say that we used that to meet 70% of our dues that were due? Was that correct? Did I hear that correctly?
No, right now it's taking care of 100% of our dues. When we think about the total expense of the city of Clovis contribution to the project over the next years through 2037, then the 0.25% we anticipate will be that 70.
No, I'm asking about the
yeah.
past 10 years that we've had the 0.25% in place.
Yeah, so
has
I was
100% of what
Yeah.
the city has collected at that time gone to our current dues and everything that we're paying?
Yes, yes, it has covered it. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Yep, Mr. Ingram, just a moment, we'll get you the mic.
And you may have mentioned it earlier, but what diameter of pipe will be used? Did you mention that? And you may have forgotten, but what?
I
that
didn't.
And how long will it take if you open the gate at Ute for the water to get here?
Those are great questions. The first one is easier to answer. It depends. The different phases of the project call for different diameters. Mr. Ortega, I believe finished water 3, the section that's going south to Portales right now, is 20-inch in diameter.
That's correct.
But there are other phases of the project where we have much larger. What's the diameter on finished water 1?
Finished water 1 will be 39-inch in diameter, and it depends on the hydraulics of the water. What we want to do from the intake facility up to the top of the cap rock is to build as much hydraulics as possible. So in order to reduce the pumping and the movement of the water. Once we reach the top of the cap rock, as I mentioned, it's gravity flow all the way down, and that's where we start focusing more on slowing the water down a little bit, and then once we start getting into the near the communities, we start the diameter of the pipe where it branches off depends on the allocation. For example, the pipeline that we've constructed that connects the city of Clovis and Cannon Air Force Base, the transmission pipeline that connects The community of Clovis is 33-inch in diameter. The lateral connecting Cannon Air Force Base is 16-inch in diameter, depending on the allocation, how much water is going to go to each location.
Great. And Mr. Ingram, your second question was how long does it take if you open the valve at the reservoir? That's going to, I mean, I'll let Mr. Ortega take a shot at that, but you know, it's going to be pumped up the caprock and end up at a water treatment facility, and then you know, gravity flow down to our communities. So any idea on?
You know, I can't answer that part of it, leaving the reservoir and filling the pipe up to the treatment facility. I can tell you that as we construct phases of this pipeline, we are filling the pipeline with water. So finished water 2 that is constructed is full of water right now. Finished water 3A, which is 2/3 of the pipeline to Clovis, is already full of water, and so forth.
We were Phillips marketers for years, and we got all our oil and gas out of Bartlesville, pumped to us to Amarillo. And I just thought of somebody said that pipe, will it be buried deep enough if we have extreme enough cold weather, it will not freeze?
Absolutely. Again, it's all in the design. And the shallowest, I believe the top of the pipe to the top of the ground is about 6 feet. And that's in a few places. And it can go down as far as 12 to 16 feet deep in some areas. Not only for that, but also for the hydraulics of the pipe to move.
Yeah, thanks for those questions. Any other comments or questions? Yep, Mr. Muse.
Once we get the pipeline going and Ebcor starts buying water, what are the economics of the cost of pumping compared to the revenue we'll generate from Ebcor?
Great question, and I'll lean on Mr. Ortega. He's familiar with those projections and the finance plan.
Thank you. At the moment, or at this time, right now, the water, once it's moving to each of the members, once we're delivering water, it's going to be up to each community as to what they want to do with their pricing. We will set one price for all of the membership, one price for all. But once it reaches that point, then it's going to be between the city of Clovis and Ebcor to negotiate and determine what that rate increase would be, if there even is a rate increase to the citizens of their community. It certainly is. In fact, in fact, we are in the process right now of updating those numbers and those calculations, but we anticipate that the system will be taking care of itself by that year, which was 2036, 2037. So membership dues, in fact, the city of Clovis's membership dues will fall to 0 before the other membership communities do, because they will upfront that 15 million, and eventually years later the rest of the membership will eventually drop to 0 also, and the system will take care of itself financially.
Did that answer that as much as possible? Yeah, very good. Any other comments or questions? Mayor Pro Tem, do you have anything to say? Good to go? All right. Very good. Well, I do sincerely appreciate those of you that have taken time out of your evening to hear an update. I got to tell you, you know, I was elected March 3rd, and it was about a month before I took office, and during that month I was able to, well, if you remember, on 8 days after I was elected, the state declared, or the governor declared, an emergency, and we entered COVID restrictions and all those things. But something else that I was able to do during that month was have a handful of conversations with the former mayor, Mayor Lansford, and he told me, he said being the mayor is 3 jobs. You're going to be a busy guy. He says, you know, it's one, it's being the mayor. You know, you preside over meetings, you're reading proclamations, you're doing those things. He said 2, it's the relationship with the Wing Command at Cannon Air Force Base, and I get that, and we have a good relationship with them. And he said third, and it'll be your full-time job, it's water. And he's absolutely right, and I am 100% convinced that the next mayor and anybody, any citizen that finds themselves in the mayor's seat, or in really the commissioner's seat, any leadership seat, you will find yourself completely burdened with our water issues. And there's nothing that I spend more time on. There's nothing that I think about more. There's nothing that I lay awake at night, contemplating and fussing over more than water. And we have a great challenge with water, with our water situation. And like I said earlier, but unlike a lot of other communities, we have an amazing opportunity to seize and meet that challenge and solve this. We can have water sustainability. And I believe this is the most important piece, but I hit it on it at the beginning. We're doing water conservation efforts, and all of that is going to matter. We need all of it. We need to conserve groundwater. We need to be conservationists on an individual basis at our homes, but the linchpin in all of it is being connected to that renewable source. We must be connected to that renewable source. And to that extent, or to that degree, we're asking the property owners in Clovis to pay a little bit more in property tax, and as I've said, that's a tough decision. That's a tough call to make. It's a tough call for your elected officials to make. But when we look into the future, we understand that it's not a penalty now. It's an investment in our future. Think about Clovis 20 or 30 years from now. If we have water sustainability, we're going to catch growth whether we want to or not. People are going to move here because we have water sustainability. I met with an industry prospect just a couple weeks ago, and I can tell you, our economic development folks, your elected officials, anybody working on economic development, we would all love to see big manufacturing, big economic-based employers come to our area. But what is always part of the conversation? Well, how much water are they going to conserve or consume? How much water do they use in their processes? We are asking those questions. Industry is asking those questions about our community. There's a question mark behind our water sustainability. We removed that question mark with the Ute pipeline and our other efforts. We now have the opportunity to grow. We're hindered because of the water issue, but we have the solution. We just got to seize the opportunity, and that's what we're doing. And yes, we are asking the citizens of property owners and the citizens of Clovis to invest a little bit more, but I really believe that the returns are there. With that, we'll conclude. Thank you.